Oh no, folks. It seems as if Chicago didn't really want to spend $12 to watch this preseason game in person. They didn't want to see the epic return of their number one star that got traded away coming back. I mean, these tickets were going for $7-8, $6.50 in some places.
The arena lights were shining, the court was spotless, the scoreboard lit up across the building, and everything was set for the Chicago Sky's return. This was supposed to feel like a major moment. Angel Reese, the self-proclaimed Chi Barbie, and one of the loudest voices claiming she helped transform women's basketball. He was stepping back onto the court in the city where her popularity exploded. The stage had been prepared like it was the beginning of a new chapter, a comeback, a reset, a chance to remind everyone why her name stays in headlines. But then reality hit once the doors opened, because the crowd everyone expected to see never really arrived.
Watch this. Uh-oh, now look, it's our time. Listen, when Caitlin had her preseason game, y'all wanted to come put stuff in our face and clown us. Well, guess what? Now it's time for y'all to get the same treatment. So tell me why in Angel's first preseason game, and it went exactly how I told y'all it would, she shot 28% in the paint, 0% from the three-point line. Every three she threw up there, clank, and then from the free throws, she made 4 out of 8. She had 8 free throws. They was free, and she only made half of them.
Now let's talk about what actually happened during the game itself, because the action on the court already painted a rough picture before anyone even started discussing the attendance numbers. Angel Reese took the floor at Wintrust Arena for the Chicago Sky's first preseason game of 2026 against the Atlanta Dream, and almost immediately, things started going in the wrong direction. Her shooting struggled badly. Reese finished just 2 of 7 from the field, missed half of her free throws by going 4 of 8 at the line, and ended the night with only 8 points in 13 minutes. Yes, only 2 made shots all game. For most players, a preseason outing like that would quietly pass by without much attention, but Angel Reese is not treated like most players. Over the last 2 years, she has consistently presented herself as one of the biggest stars in the sport and a central figure for the Chicago Sky franchise. And when you carry that level of attention and confidence around your name, performances like this never stay unnoticed for long.
She decides to let her ego get in the way. That's where she's going to be dangerous and destroy the team. And I'm being honest here, because honestly, she's literally the same player from last year. She's the same player from the year before. She didn't really change that much, man. She's the same exact player, okay? As long as she can score 0 to 5 feet and don't miss layups, she will be fine. But I don't think it's the game on the court is the issue. The issue is, will she be willing to accept a role player position? If she accepts it, she will be fine. If she don't, there's going to be huge problems. This is going to be called Atlanta nightmare afterwards. I'm telling you, that's what it is. It's going to come down to that. Is she willing to accept her role? Because I said this before and I got hated for it, but I don't give a damn.
Reese's move to the Atlanta Dream during the offseason had already become one of the most talked about storylines heading into the year, which made this preseason matchup even more awkward and dramatic. This was her first game against the Chicago Sky since leaving the franchise, meaning she was walking back into the same arena where tensions had boiled over publicly during her time with the team. The storyline practically wrote itself. A former star returning to face the organization she reportedly clashed with, stepping back into a city where controversy, headlines, and criticism had followed her for months. On paper, it felt like the kind of game Chicago fans would pack the arena to witness, but the atmosphere inside Wintrust Arena told a completely different story. Before the game even started, the message from the crowd was already obvious. Roughly 3,000 seats remained empty in a building that was expected to be loud, packed, and energized for Reese's return. Instead of a sold-out atmosphere welcoming one of the league's biggest personalities back to Chicago, huge sections of the arena sat noticeably unfilled.
Now, if I had to take a guess, behind the baskets, they said, you guys don't need to sit here. Let's actually file you in to the hundreds, to the 100 sections, and we'll move you towards center court. So on TV, it actually looks like there's more people in the building than it actually is. So I'm assuming that Behind this backboard, you see that it's empty. The upper deck, you see that it's empty. But I would also assume that behind the basket that we're getting this camera angle from, it is empty, and the upper deck is empty. If I had to take a guess, 1,500 people in the building? Maybe 1,500?
The reaction online happened almost instantly. It always does when something feels off. Not long after tip-off, pictures and videos showing large sections of empty seats inside Wintrust Arena started spreading across X, TikTok, and Reddit. Within minutes, social media turned the atmosphere into the biggest storyline of the night, and the comments came flooding in. Angel Reese returns and thousands of seats are still empty? She goes 2 for 7 and the arena looks half asleep. Maybe the crowd already knew how this was going to go. Some fans were genuinely surprised by the turnout. Others acted like they expected it the entire time. But no matter which side people took, one thing was impossible to deny once those images hit the internet. The visuals spoke for themselves. Empty seats do not follow media narratives. They do not care about hype, headlines, or social media popularity. They simply show up on camera exactly as they are. And on April 29th in Chicago, those thousands of unfilled seats sent a message loud enough for everyone online to notice immediately.
It's been a while, and I'm sure you came back to a sellout crowd that could not wait to see you, or not. Only 6,724 fans showed up to the Wintrust Arena. Yeah, it holds about 9,500 fans, so we're talking roughly 3,000 fans away from being sold out to see the return of Angel Reese. And
what made the situation even more awkward is that this was not the first time a storyline like this had followed Angel Reese. Go back to May of 2025 for a second. The Chicago Sky traveled to LSU for a preseason exhibition game inside the Pete Maravich Assembly Center, the same arena where Reese became a college superstar, won a national championship, and built the reputation that turned her into one of the biggest names in women's basketball. On paper, that should have been a massive event. It was her basketball homecoming, a return to the building where fans once treated her like a legend. But the turnout quickly became its own story because the crowd simply never matched the hype. The upper level of the arena reportedly stayed closed because there were not enough ticket sales to justify opening it. Resale prices dropped incredibly low, with some tickets floating around for barely more than $10. And even then, large sections of seats remained empty. Once those photos hit social media, the internet immediately ran with them. People debated what it meant, questioned Reese's actual drawing power, and turned the attendance issue into a non-stop online conversation throughout the preseason. And now, 1 year later, the exact same type of discussion returned again, only this time, it happened in Chicago. The same uncomfortable message that LSU fans unintentionally sent in 2025 suddenly appeared again during Reese's return game against the Sky. Except now it was coming from the very city where she was expected to be one of the biggest stars in professional basketball.
Yeah, just being grateful for my opportunities that I did have here in my first 2 years. A lot of positives, and fans came out and showed a lot of support for both teams. So I'm really happy and grateful, and happy to be here playing them.
And just your first experience playing with all your teammates and in the official campus, how did you feel you were feeling out there with your new team?
Yeah, I didn't feel new. Everybody keeps asking how I feel, but
At a certain point, it becomes difficult to ignore the pattern that keeps forming around all of this. When Angel Reese's 2025 season unraveled, it did not happen quietly or behind the scenes. Everything seemed to fall apart publicly and all at once. The Chicago Sky ended the year with a brutal 10-34 record, missing the playoffs for the second consecutive season and finishing near the bottom of the league standings. And considering the expectations surrounding the franchise when they committed to building around Reese, that kind of collapse hit much harder than a normal losing season. This was supposed to be a team moving forward. Instead, the entire year spiraled, and the problems were not limited to basketball. Off the court, the situation became even more complicated after Reese gave an interview to the Chicago Tribune, where she openly suggested the organization needed to improve the roster, or she might eventually reconsider her future with the franchise. That immediately created tension. The Sky reportedly did not respond well to those comments at all, eventually suspending Reese and publicly describing her remarks as harmful to the team environment. And that is not the type of situation people simply forget about. When a franchise suspends one of its biggest stars during the season over public criticism of the roster, it becomes far bigger than just another headline. Situations like that follow players long after the season ends. In Reese's case, the fallout carried directly into the offseason and ultimately became part of the reason her time in Chicago came to an end before her move to Atlanta.
Said that she doesn't believe her teammates Rachel Bannum or Haley Van Lith are capable of leading a playoff team. And according to the Tribune, Reese believes that the team needs to be overhauled this season around just two solidified pieces on the 2026 roster, herself and Camila Cardoso. She said, "I'm not settling for the same crap we did this year. We have to get good players. We have to get great players. However I can help to get the best here, that's what I'm going to do this offseason. I'd like to be here for my career, but if things don't pan out, obviously I might have to move in a different direction and do what's best."
So by the time the 2026 preseason rolled around and Angel Reese returned to Chicago wearing an Atlanta Dream jersey, the game already carried layers of drama before the opening tip ever happened. There was the messy departure from the Sky, the suspension that still lingered in people's minds, the awkward return to Wintrust Arena, and the lingering question of whether the relationship between Reese and the organization had truly ended on good terms. But underneath all of those headlines sat another conversation that has followed Reese since the beginning of her WNBA career: her scoring efficiency. More specifically, the criticism surrounding her ability to consistently finish shots around the basket. That discussion exploded again after this performance. For the last 2 seasons, critics have repeatedly pointed to the same issue whenever Reese's stat lines get posted online. Yes, the rebounding numbers often look impressive at first glance, and nobody denies her activity level or motor on the glass. But some analysts argue that a noticeable percentage of those rebounds come from recovering her own missed shots near the rim, rather than creating extra possessions off teammates' misses. And when people start looking deeper at those numbers, the conversation around her production becomes far more complicated than the raw box score initially suggests.
The whole time, you guys were serious about Angel Reese rebounds coming from her own layups? I ain't believe it till today. Like, I'm looking, I see she got 7 in the first quarter. I'm like, oh yeah, she balling. I go on ESPN, Angel Reese offensive rebound, Angel Reese miss, Angel Reese offensive rebound, Angel Reese miss, Angel Reese offensive rebound, Angel Reese blocked, rebound, Angel Reese blocked again, rebound. Bruh, do you not have other teammates, gang? After the second miss, just pass the ball. What am I looking at right now? This all happened in the first quarter in the span of 2 minutes, bro. I thought people was trolling when they said this, bro. Like, I know the Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese beef on the internet is crazy, but nah. We gotta leave color out of this. What the hell is that? I'm surprised her teammates are not upset at her, bro. All these attempts, you could have easily passed the ball. You rebound, you see you can't put it up, pass it.
One of the biggest moments that fueled this entire debate happened back in May of 2025 during a game against the New York Liberty, a sequence that quickly exploded across social media for all the wrong reasons. During one stretch of that game, Angel Reese missed 8 shots while still collecting 12 rebounds, and the part people could not stop talking about was a wild 19-second sequence where she grabbed 5 offensive rebounds in a row, all created from her own missed attempts around the basket. 5 rebounds in 19 seconds sounds incredible at first, but once fans watched the actual clip, the conversation instantly became more divided. The sequence spread everywhere online, analysts broke it down, sports pages reposted it non-stop, and fans across X, TikTok, YouTube, and Reddit argued about what it actually represented. Some people praised her relentless effort and hustle. Others pointed to it as the perfect example of the biggest concern surrounding her offensive game, because both things can be true at the same time. The rebounds absolutely count. Her energy and persistence on the glass are real strengths, but the missed shots creating many of those rebound opportunities are also part of the story. And once people started looking at the full context instead of only the final rebound totals, the discussion around Reese's production became much more complicated than a basic stat sheet makes it appear. That viral Liberty sequence never really disappeared from public conversation either, so when Reese followed it up by shooting just 2 for 7 against the Chicago Sky on April 29th while also missing 4 free throws, many fans immediately connected it back to the same ongoing criticism that has followed her for years.
Yesterday, finished the game. 8 points, 7 rebounds, 3 steals. She was on fire. She was cooking. She was cooking. At least that's what you would think. With this Yahoo Sports graphic, and of course fans, they weren't letting it slide by. Well, shot 2 for 7. You can find better hoops at an 8th grade AAU. Damn. Poster stats, dog. 2 for 7. Field goal, under the rim. 4 for 8 from the free throws. Ouchie.
Ouch. Yeah, this is where the conversation around shooting efficiency gets uncomfortable and why it keeps sticking. Because Angel Reese isn't being criticized for taking wild or impossible shots. She's not out there jacking up deep contested threes or forcing tough stepbacks off the dribble. That's not the issue. The problem people keep pointing to is much more specific. It's the shots right at the basket. Layups, close range finishes, free throws, the most basic high percentage opportunities in the game. The ones players her size are expected to convert consistently. At 6'3" with her strength and athletic profile, finishing around the rim is supposed to be one of her biggest advantages, not something that raises questions. And yet, game after game, preseason after preseason, that is exactly where the conversation keeps circling back. Not her rebounding, not her defense, not her effort, her finishing. Because when the simplest shots become the most inconsistent part of your game, it starts to shape how people view everything else you do on the floor. And that's the core issue here. When missed layups and missed free throws end up driving the post-game discussion more than anything else you did, it usually means the narrative around your game hasn't moved in a positive direction.
This is the game from tonight.
Angel Reese was shooting the three. Angel Reese steps away in the passing lane, forces the turnover, calls her own number, can't finish.
I bet that was highly. She fouled out of the.
For that shot, Angel Reese doing
Pathetic.
some action on the defensive glass.
Point.
Was excited for her opportunity to
Free
return
throw.
to Chicago. And now this league and
You think she's Kayla
great
Clark?
up there as well. Blocks the read. We've got 2 new teams here in the league this year. Angel Reese on her head going right at Cardoso. Angel with the rebound. Angel with the putback and draws.
Now let's go back to those 3,000 empty seats, because they are not just a detail, they are part of the story. The lack of interest around Angel Reese in Chicago did not happen suddenly. It built up over time, layer by layer, through a difficult 10-34 season that never really gave fans much to be excited about. It carried through a public suspension that added more tension than clarity, and eventually into an off-season exit that felt less like a celebration and more like a quiet separation that had been coming for a while. Fans noticed all of it, they absorbed it, they formed opinions based on everything that happened along the way. So when the moment arrived for her return game in Chicago, and they had to decide whether or not to show up, thousands of them made the same choice and stayed home instead. That is not random disinterest. That is a response built over time, because when a player returns to a market that watched her closely for 2 full seasons, and a large portion of that same fan base decides not to attend a heavily promoted preseason game, it raises a deeper question. It is not simply whether fans were aware of the moment, it is what they remember from everything leading up to it, and what conclusion they've already drawn from it.
Listening to the announcers, Angel drives, miss. Angel Reese, miss. Angel, nothing but rim. My God, she jumps and gets shorter. Block. Falls on head 3 times. Angel Reese, 28% from the field, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. Don't call it a comeback.
The comparison that always makes this discussion uncomfortable for some people is the one nobody can really avoid, because during that same 2025 WNBA season, the year Chicago finished 10-34, missed the playoffs again, dealt with internal turmoil, and suspended Angel Reese. Something very different was happening elsewhere in the league. The Indiana Fever were dealing with the opposite problem. Their games were in such high demand that regular venues were no longer big enough. Instead of struggling for attention, they were upgrading arenas. Across the league, teams like the Atlanta Dream, Connecticut Sun, and Dallas Wings also began shifting select home games into NBA-sized venues just to accommodate the larger crowds. It wasn't about convenience, it was about capacity, and that trend continued into 2026. Out of Indiana's 44 regular season games, 39 are scheduled to be played in NBA-level arenas. 39. That number alone tells its own story, because while the league as a whole can be growing, growing, the reality is that certain players are driving attention at a completely different scale than others. And attendance doesn't argue, explain, or justify anything. It simply reflects what people are willing to show up and pay to see. At the end of the day, the numbers don't interpret the narrative, they are the narrative.
We've been practicing, for a week and a half, and it feels like a month, it feels like 2 months, and it's been super seamless. I think everybody can see an easy adjustment for me because I think my teammates and my coaches put a lot of confidence into me, and they want me to take the shots that sometimes I'm not confident maybe to take, but I was able to come out tonight and take shots that I was not comfortable taking, and they still pat me on the back for it and still uplifted me in ways that I probably didn't have before. So I'm just really grateful.
And that brings us right back to where this conversation keeps circling. A new season, a new team, a new city. Atlanta now becomes the stage, waiting to see which version of Angel Reese actually shows up when real stakes replace preseason noise. The Chicago chapter is supposed to be behind her now. The suspension, the 10-34 season, the playoff misses, even the empty seats in Chicago, and the underwhelming turnout in Baton Rouge. On paper, it's all in the past, but the past doesn't disappear just because the calendar flips. That's the thing about looking in the rearview mirror. It's there for a reason. What's behind you doesn't just fade away, it continues to shape how people see what comes next. Reese has always been a player who leans into attention rather than away from it. She's been vocal, confident, and unafraid to define her own identity in the spotlight. That kind of presence is part of what made her a recognizable figure in the first place. But confidence alone doesn't carry the full story. At some point, production has to meet personality, and right now, that's where the tension sits. Because the conversation isn't only about who she is off the court. It's about what happens on it. The shooting efficiency still raises questions. The offensive limitations still get talked about. And the reality is simple. Second chance points from your own misses can't be the foundation of a long-term offensive identity. Eventually, the ball has to go in cleanly. And then there are the numbers that don't come from box scores, like the 3,000 empty seats in Chicago on April 29th. That wasn't random. It wasn't bad weather, or a scheduling quirk, or a one-off marketing issue. It was a reflection of something deeper, how a portion of that fan base currently feels about what they've seen. Whether that message gets acknowledged or ignored is entirely up to her, but the one thing that never changes is this: seats don't argue, they don't explain, they just show up empty when people choose not to come.